Okay, horror fans, we're back once again with another edition of Horror Month 2017, and another. We're the box office maniacs. We're back. We're back with another part to this continuous franchise that pretty much has died, but kind of continues, or at least continues along in our brains, right, David?
Well, I almost died watching this, I can tell you.
The movie that we're going to review for you this time around, we've already done the first two parts. Now we're at part 3, and it is Creepshow 3.
Before we started this whole Creepshow journey this month, I didn't even know this movie existed until I started looking it up. And I saw Creepshow 3, and I was like, when did they make a Creepshow 3 exactly?
So that's when he calls me up and he says, "Hey Vince, did you know there's a Creepshow 3?" And I was like, "Yeah, Dave, I did."
And I think there's a pretty good reason why I never knew it.
You know elaborately how I met George Romero. And talking to him, he even said, or he mentioned, yeah, there's a third one that they're making, but I'm not involved in that one. And I said, wow, okay, well, that ought to be interesting, but I kind of wish you guys were doing it, you know?
Well, let's see. I don't even know where to start with this thing. First of all, it's Creepshow in name only. That's it. Somehow these people bought the name of Creepshow since nobody else was doing anything with it. They're like, hey, let's get Creepshow. We'll throw it in here, and people will watch it because it's Creepshow, which I did. And that's pretty much the only thing that this movie has to do with the first two at all.
There's actually some elements of what could have been Creepshow in this. The problem is the movie sucks. It's terrible. It's not a good film at all. But there's little things in it that I actually did kind of go, okay, well, that was a good idea. I wish they would have done something with that. They could have gone somewhere with that, but this film mostly goes nowhere.
Let me just tell you the opening animation, what it was. It only lasted for, about 30 seconds. There's this dog walking down the street. Girl kills the dog, opens up her own stand, and is selling hot dogs from the dog she killed. That's the type of stuff that's in this movie.
I guess it's some sort of computer animated kind of thing, because, I mean, it looks so cheap. It looked like it took maybe all of $10 to make it. Like they paid somebody $10. Here, make us a quick animation for this.
Now, you were saying there were parts and pieces of this that you liked. Now, okay, first of all, the opening story, it was almost unwatchable. It was so bad. The acting was horrendous. The effects weren't horrible, I guess. The story in the first one was this girl was walking down some street, and her family had... I'm getting choked up. I'm getting choked up, man.
You want me to take over, Dave?
She was walking down the street, and she gets in her house, and her parents have like a remote, and they turn this remote, turn the TV, and then all of a sudden she's walking down the street again, and she walks into this house, and it's a different family. And then they do the same. They say the same stuff, and then they do the remote again, and she walks into the house. Now it's a Spanish family talking in Spanish. And then and that's the beginning of this. And every time she is being, rebroadcast or whatever you want to call it, she starts like melting for some reason. And I'm just like, okay.
Well, yeah. Let me talk a little bit about that first story too. If they would have done the whole thing with the universal remote and just kind of left it that way, it actually might have been something interesting, because it was like, every time he hit the remote, her world would change, or something would change. They would, and if they had done something along that idea, that's what I'm saying, is like they had an idea there, and then they just didn't go anywhere. She ends up turning into a rabbit. What?
A rabbit can dream, can't he?
Throughout this entire movie, the entire thing, there's this running thing with hot dogs. I don't know why.
Oh, I'd love to be an Oscar Mayer wiener.
Oscar Mayer wieners are all meat, all good meat.
And then The
Mildly seasoned to bring out all the good meat flavor.
and it goes into the second story.
My hot dog has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R.
Hot dogs.
But the second story wasn't horrible. That's the best I can say.
Well, this one actually has 5 main stories again, but you're right. With the second story, with this radio, I actually did like this story. I liked the story to it. I didn't like the end of it. The end of it doesn't. There's no payoff, and there's no real big thing about it, or a big twist or anything. And it's like, okay, well, hot dogs.
The second story with the radio, I didn't mind too much. I thought the acting in that was okay, and I kind of liked that story. Out of all the stories in there, there's this one and there's one more that I somewhat liked. But then there's other stories that are just so horrendous.
The thing about this whole film is they keep introducing these characters, and throughout the film, you see these characters keep coming back throughout the entire movie. They end up in all the other different stories, which is not like Creepshow. It's more like Trick or Treat, kind of. I about died laughing at this one, though, Dave. The guy that sells him the radio. What the hell was that, though? He's sitting there, he sells him the radio, and then he goes, ah!
The other story that I did like was the one with the prostitute. I thought that was a pretty good story. I did like that one. Out of the radio and that one, I'd probably say that one was probably, out of all the stories here, the one that I probably liked the most.
And I liked the call girl idea as well. And this was actually a little more Creepshow. Out of all these stories, it was probably the most that was kind of like Creepshow, because the way it ends up, you don't know why it happened and everything, and that's kind of a Creepshow-esque kind of thing, you know. But then he ends up later on in another story, and there's like a whole group of them, and it just doesn't go anywhere. There's literally nothing to say why it's there. Hot dogs.
I think, besides the first one, the last one here was probably, oh man, it was bad. It was one of the worst things I've seen with the Doctor. I just hated that one so bad. That wasn't the last. It was, what, the second to last?
No, that was the last one, but the second to last one was the Professor.
Yeah, that one was terrible too. But again, that could have been kind of cool. I mean, it could have been interesting, but it wasn't, and it just came off as stupid. And the idea behind it, okay, yeah, I can kind of see. He has like a wife, and these 2 students come in, and they think maybe that he built her, that she's a robot, and, you know, they're trying to explore that. Okay, you know, but it was terrible.
Yeah, the idea of it was kind of interesting, because, like you said, you know, they think he built her because he's got some kind of secret thing that he's building, which they never reveal, and it's like he's got this secret thing that he's building, and he leaves, and they leaves him with his bride to be, and they do something to her. I'm not going to give it away if somebody actually really wants to watch it, but they do something to her, and the whole segment just ends up goofy. It really ends up goofy. It's dumb.
The Doctor episode, that was it. That did it. That really did it in for me. That was, oh man, just talk about some terrible acting from everybody. Just a stupid story. The whole thing was dumb. That whole story was just painful to watch.
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh my god. That was just horrendously bad. I mean, it was terribly bad.
And once again, we got the whole hot dog in there again, and that whole story revolved around the hot dog, and it was stupid. It's stupid.
It's the meat. Don't skimp on the meat.
All good meat.
Well, even in the Professor story, the lady, I think if I remember right, she leaves. She goes, "I'm going to go out and get some hot dogs for us." You know, I don't know what the whole thing with the hot dog is. And here in this last story, you see this doctor, who's just an ass, and he gives this homeless guy a hot dog. And the homeless guy, I guess this homeless guy is supposed to be the equivalent of the hitchhiker from Creepshow 2. This one, he just kind of shows up, and then he goes away for about 20 minutes, and all you see is this doctor being mean to everybody, and being an asshole. And then he shows up again, and he's throwing up hot dogs.
Maybe they thought, man, we got this sweet, sweet animation in the beginning of this movie with this awesome, sweet animated dog and this awesome, sweet hooded person who kills a dog, and we need to expand on that because that is so cool.
And throughout the whole thing, you keep seeing this guy, the whole hot dog thing, keep seeing this hot dog vendor.
Hi, you hungry?
In the beginning, it's the little creepy, disturbed guy looking, Jawa looking thing, and then by the end of it, throughout the middle of it, you just keep seeing this old hot dog vendor.
Hold on till I absorb some heat.
And by the end of it, it's revealed that this is supposed to be Creep, I guess?
Some added tang might please you too.
He turns around and he has this mask on that looks sort of like Creep from Creepshow 2. And then this bad CGI melting thing happens.
I'll slide into an oven-fresh bun, and I'm ready for your eating fun.
I'm getting a little getting choked up. As soon as you mention the effects, I get choked up.
This town loves prime meat.
I just wish somebody would finally get a hold of the series and actually do it some real justice and do a real Creepshow again and make it look like Creepshow, like George Romero and Stephen King intended from the very beginning, with the whole EC Comics and the Vault of Horror and Tales from the Dark Side and all of that.
Overall here, Vince, I am going to give Creepshow 2 a 1 out of 5. I almost gave it a 2 just because of those two stories weren't terrible. They were watchable, but it can't save it. It just can't save it.
And I would second that wholeheartedly. A 1 out of 5 for me as well. And just leave it at that because it's just terrible. It's just...
I've lost all sense of everything after watching this movie, really.
Subscribe to us, hit the little bell. You guys don't suck. Hopefully we didn't suck. But Creepshow 3, it sucked.
Why don't you try a juicy good hot dog?
Haunted hot dogs, people. Haunted hot dogs.
Mmm, delicious.